Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I am looking at my first game back after a 2-month hiatus. So I actually haven't played Warships in a really long time, which is a big part of why I haven't been uploading videos recently. That's mostly due to finals and life things getting kind of in the way. But fortunately, this was my first game back, and it was pretty good. Not amazing, but good enough to, I think, put on the channel, because I think it demonstrates some pretty key concepts to at least competent cruiser play. So, as you can see, I am sailing in my Hipper. The deal with the Hipper is it's a heavy cruiser. You get 8, I think 203mm guns. Like I said, it's been 2 months since I played when I played this game this morning. But the main takeaway from the guns is essentially you have really good AP, and your HE is like kind of okay. So with the AP, you'll notice I've loaded it right away. The reason I've done that is because I really want to kind of go after the enemy cruisers and make them regret their life choices. You'll notice that they actually have a Cleveland, a Miyoko, and a Baltimore and a Nuremberg on their team, all of which I can very severely punish with my AP. And I'm actually going to get, I think, a 15k damage salvo on a Miyoko a little later in the game. But for now, I'm going to shoot the Miyoko first. There's a Bismarck and a Miyoko spotted. I choose to focus the Miyoko with my HE, 2 reasons. First, Miyoko is closer. Let me just turn down the volume a little bit. First, Miyoko is closer. Second, Miyoko is an easier to kill target. It's squishier, and the faster we can kill ships, take their DPM away, the better. For the same reason, I'm shooting the destroyer. He's closer. He's a destroyer. It's very easy for him to go undetected, and it's also, he's very squishy, so he's easy to kill. So that's why I'm taking these shots at him now. I'm actually going to miss this shot, which is going to make me sad, but I'm going to try and take a blind shot, and I'm going to miss that one too. So this guy's going to cause some problems for us a little later. The really sad part is that if any of those shots had hit, we would have killed him, and that would have been really good, but he's going to stay alive for a little longer, unfortunately. So now I am looking for the Miyoko, but I am not able to get shots on him, which is unfortunate. I'm going to dodge some torpedoes here. Okay, so before we go any further, I want to talk a little bit about my map positioning. So you notice where I am on the map. I think I'm actually almost a little bit too aggressive right now. But you'll notice that I'm on like the 4 line, and I'm not where that Chapayev is. So I want to kind of compare and contrast the positions of myself and the Chapayev right now, because there's a couple important differences. First of all, you'll notice that although I'm actually further up than he is, my positioning is slightly more aggressive, but my position is also a little safer, and I'll explain why. And by safer, I mean it's like safer long term. So the reason my position is safer, basically 2 reasons. First of all, it's safer from a game carrying perspective, and it's safer from a long-term survivability perspective. Obviously, right now I'm getting shot at, but if I want to run away, all I have to do is turn around and sail back to where that Dallas is, and I can pretty easily disengage, right? If the Chapayev wants to disengage, he has to go back behind one of those islands in 1 or 2, but then once he wants to, like, leave that position, he has to sail all down here to get out of that position. He has to sail all the way over here. Meanwhile, I don't have that far to go to get into good cover and be able to flex around to the rest of the map. So that's one advantage of my positioning. The other advantage is when we are pushing or being pushed back, my position is going to be much stronger. If we are able to win this fight, which we won't, but if we are able to win it, I'll just be able to push up along this island and push right into the enemy base. It won't be very hard. This Chapayev, he has to push all the way along here to get into the enemy base. That's way more time. It's time he doesn't want to spend, and it's time we can't afford to spend if we're going to be trying to cap fast on this flank. Meanwhile, if I have to fall back, if I'm like in this area, all I have to do is just fall back. I can get back behind the cap circle really quickly. That's what's actually gonna happen in this game. But the goal is that I want to be in a position where it's easy for me to flex around the map, and so that's why positions kind of in the middle, more central, are a lot safer. Meanwhile, this Chapa, if he wants to get back and defend the base, he has to sail all down along here. And the reason he has to sail down along here and not through here is because if the enemy wins this, they're going to be pushing into this area. And this is a Chapayev. He is not going to win a close-range brawl with a Tirpitz and a Bismarck. It's just not going to happen. So if that Tirpitz and that Bismarck are pushing down through here, which is what's going to happen, this Chapa basically has to hug the end of the map in order to get back into our base to defend it, or hug the end of the map this way in order to get into the enemy base if he wants to try and be sneaky. So the reality is that central positioning in cruisers and this kind of edge hugging this way is not usually sustainable. It doesn't lead to good long-term success in the game. It doesn't lead to a good ability to carry the game. So anyway, a couple of other things to take away from this sort of positioning here on this flank. You'll notice that our battleships are kind of far back. This has a couple of impacts. The first impact is it means that our destroyers are less likely to win their fights. So we've actually I think we've already lost a DD on this flank. And part of the reason for that is our destroyers are kind of up here, isolated from our battleships, who are all the way back here. And these guys can't really do anything about the destroyers over here. Meanwhile, when our destroyers get spotted, their battleships are right here. Their Miyoko's right here. Their Cleveland's right here. And the reason their Cleveland, their Miyoko, and their Nuremberg, and their Tirpitz and Bismarck are all able to have shots is partly because our destroyers have been more aggressive. But it's also partly because their battleships are in a position where they can actually do something about the destroyers. Now, for the record, their battleships are pretty out of position. Ideally, they'd be over here. But as it stands, this is where they're going to be. And as it stands, our battleships, I think, are being a little bit passive. But by this point in the game, it's a little bit late for aggression, I think, from our battleships by now. We've already lost destroyers. The enemy's already pushing up. I think if both of our battleships were able to go up here and do something about this Miyoko and the Nuremberg, they could hopefully turn this flank around. And that's kind of what they try and do, I think. So props to them for that, at least. But right now, what I'm doing is I'm just thinking, okay, I need right now to stop the enemy team from pushing in. And unfortunately, I don't notice this Jervis until after I've already fired at the Miyoko, which really stinks. So I'm gonna try and get shots at him, but he's actually killed by Tirpitz secondaries. So anyway, what I'm trying to do right now is I just want to stop the enemy pushing in, right? I think the way this is panned out, and you'll notice this Choppa is now taking all this time. He has to push all the way back around here. But what we need to be doing right now is we need to be thinking about trying to protect our base. I can't really be super aggressive because they have a Bismarck here, and they have a Tirpitz here. We're picking up the kill on the Cleveland. And because of that, it's hard for me to be super aggressive against these guys all at once, especially since they do have the Cleveland, they have the Nuremberg. I'm already on half hit points, and I don't think it's very sustainable for me to push up. So right now I'm just thinking about staying back and trying to get as much damage as I can. And if I were this Tirpitz and this Gneisenau, I would probably be thinking something along the same lines of play. So now these guys are starting to be aggressive, but I think it's a little bit late for that, and especially the way they're going to handle it is really not very conducive. So they're kind of giving a lot of angle, I think, to this Bismarck. Admittedly, the Bismarck is giving us a lot of broadside too, but our Tirpitz is doing the same thing. And so that's going to punish him pretty badly in a little bit. You'll notice he's already lost almost all of his hit points. And, like, the best I can do to help him is just to try and support him with my DPM. There's not really a lot aggressive I can do at this point, because I'll just die. And our Tirpitz gives enough broadside to the Bismarck and dies, which should not be a surprise at all. There's that Hipper AP. So, like I said, I'm trying to be passive at this point in the game because I really don't want to die, and I just need to stay alive. If I die at this point and the Gneisenau dies, there's nothing stopping the enemies from just pushing into our base, outfighting these guys, and winning the game. Literally nothing. And so we have to think about that as a possibility. We need to be thinking long-term. We need to be thinking, okay, how do I get into a position to prevent my team from losing and possibly help us win? And so that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. And that's why I'm not, like, YOLOing in, right? If I'm too aggressive and I die, then we have a Gneisenau, a Nagato, a Dallas, and an Algerie trying to stand up against a Bismarck and a Tirpitz. And that's not going to end well for them at all. So really, we just need to be chill. Okay, so let's see here. Just going to try and analyze the battleship play on our side a little bit. You'll remember that early on, they weren't too aggressive. They were kind of just back here, just kind of loitering around. And so what happened was our friendlies ended up just getting basically farmed up here. Our destroyers weren't able to stay in those positions. They all died. And I couldn't play aggressive, and our Shapayev couldn't play aggressive because our battleships weren't being able to push up. And by the time our destroyers had already died, it was way too late. So there's a 15k volley on the Cleveland. This is what I mean when I say the Hipper AP is really good. Now, I actually lead ahead because I expect the Cleveland to accelerate a lot here, but instead he's still going really slow, which is just kind of confusing to me. This is one of those situations where you kind of, like, expect the enemy to be playing better than they are, but he's just kind of sitting there, like, full broadside. So I could have killed him here if I had anticipated he was going to do that, but I didn't. So anyway, I'm just trying to pick up the kill on this Cleveland. We need this guy to die right now. Because he's providing DPM, he's shooting at our Gneiss now. Again, it's hard for me to be super aggressive, because if I try and push up, these battleships are just going to murder me, right? I need to kite away, I need to farm these guys as they push in, and use the fact that I'm kiting away, I'm sailing away from them, and I'm at long range to my advantage. So, like, and then the Gneiss now obviously is going to give broadside, because that's what you do, and he's going to die. So, why is kiting good in this situation? If your team throws a flank, right, and again, I was in a cruiser, there's not a whole lot I can do if my battleships aren't playing aggressive, and the enemy battleships are higher tier and are playing aggressive. So in this situation, I need to kite away. Why is that a good thing to do? The reason kiting away is typically a good thing to do is twofold. First of all, you're putting yourself in a situation where you strictly have the advantage in shooting at the enemy. They're sailing into me, which means it's harder for them to dodge my shots, and my shot is easier, just from an aiming perspective, it's just easier to shoot enemies that are sailing into you. And I'm sailing away from them, which means that their shots will take longer to hit me, which means I have more time to dodge, and it's harder for them to aim at me, period. Which is going to allow me to just kite these guys. The other advantage is I'm putting myself far away, which obviously is good because I will tend to do better at long range than they do, especially given I have this nice turtleback armor, and I have the ability to sort of tank some of their fire. So our Algeria is going to die, which is going to leave me as pretty much the last person on this flank other than the Leningrad. Okay. So at this point, the rest of this match is actually pretty straightforward. I'm just trying to kite these guys and slow down their cap progress as much as possible. The thing I want to highlight is you'll notice that I didn't do too much risky things at the beginning of the game because I wanted to preserve my ship and I wanted to preserve my hit points, right? Like, if you're in this kind of situation where you think your teams are evenly matched, you have to be careful because one ship dying could be the balancing factor between your team winning and your team losing that flank. And in this case, our battleships were too passive, which got our destroyers killed. And for the record, I think our destroyers should have, taken that into account, read the map, and realized, okay, we can't push. I'm actually switching to the turrets here. In retrospect, I think this is a misplay. I think I should have just kept shooting the Bismarck, because I can reset the turrets anytime. I need to kill this Bismarck. So I do think that was actually a misplay on my part. Which is kind of unfortunate, but it's okay. We will end up winning this game. So, anyway, where was I? Right, surviving the game. So early on, I didn't take too many risks because I knew if I died, then that could potentially mean the difference between winning and losing the game. Because now that I'm alive, I can sit here and farm these guys as they're in the cap circle. So I can pad my damage, and I can pad my XP, and I can pad my credits. And at the same time, I can also stop these guys from capping out. So right now, I'm just trying to run away, right? I can't push in there and try and fight these guys in a brawl. They'll just kill me. And I actually do make a... I'm going to do that in a little bit, which I think is a gigantic misplay. But anyway, right now I'm switching to the turrets. These guys are telling me to rush cap to delay. And at the time, I felt peer pressured into doing it, so I did, against my better judgment. I should really have just stayed out and kited. The reason for that is simple. The reason I should have just stayed out and kited is because, like, as long as I can shoot these guys, I can reset them. My physical proximity to the cap circle doesn't matter. I'm going to die before I get into the cap in any regard, so I could have easily just stayed out here, used this island in G7 as cover, and just farm these guys as they pushed in. As it stands, though, that's not what's going to happen. I'm going to pick up the kill on this Bismarck, and then I think the turret secondaries are going to kill me. Okay. So, what was the wrap-up of this game? The big takeaway from this game is that, essentially, we stayed alive for as long as possible. We didn't do stupid aggressive plays in the beginning that would have gotten us killed. We kept in mind the fact that our battleships weren't playing super aggressive, and we used that fact... okay, I'm getting some weird... choppiness here in my replay. I don't know if that'll show up. Anyway, but because I was able to stay alive for most of the game, I was able to do a ton of damage and help carry. I got 2 kills and delayed the cap for a pretty significant amount of time. So anyway, at this point, our Icarus leaves the cap circle, which I think was a really boneheaded move. And I'm also not really sure why let me go into free cam here. I'm not really sure. Oh my god. Okay. I'm not really sure why the Bismarck on our team, who is currently in E7, is not capping as well. He's not going to make it back to our cap circle in time to like do anything. So I'm really not sure what he's doing. Ideally, we would be 3 in cap right now, and we would be winning. But that's not what's happening. So this is a bit of a boneheaded decision on the part of my teammates. But anyway, the big takeaway as a cruiser player is you want to stay alive, right? Cruisers are DPM, right? Your strength comes in the fact that you can put out consistent damage throughout the course of the game. That is the most important takeaway for a cruiser. And if you die right at the beginning, you lose all of that power. That's the key point, right? So rule number 1 in a cruiser is don't die stupidly early on if you can avoid it. I would say it's even like worth giving up a cap circle to not die, in my opinion, in a cruiser. You want to protect yourself. You want to stay alive. The other thing is use kiting as a useful trick. Kiting is something that's very, very, very important because it's a tactic that you can use to stay alive against multiple ships. So for example, in this situation, I was able to mostly stay alive for a pretty long time while kiting multiple enemies. And this Bismarck is actually going to get very lucky here. And that he is actually going to be able to make it around and get around and defend the cap. And the Icarus is going to return to the enemy cap circle. But anyway, so those are the big takeaways from this game if you're a cruiser. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned a little something from it. If you liked it, like, subscribe to my channel, and I'll hopefully see you next time. I'll try and upload videos a little more frequently now that I'm on break. So yeah, I'll see you in a few days.